My colleagues and I understand the hardship that high inflation is causing, and we are strongly committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal. Over the past year, we've taken forceful actions to tighten the stance of monetary policy. We've covered a lot of ground, and the full effects of our rapid tightening so far are yet to be felt.
All right, here we go, fellow Americans. You just heard it yourself. Jay Powell just announced that we have yet to feel the full effects of the Fed raising interest rates in an attempt to tame inflation. So what will this mean for our economy? And for my audience here, what will this mean for home prices and home rent prices? As millions of home buyers are sitting once again on the sidelines waiting for home prices to come down to a more affordable level. And this comes just after not even a full year of home buyers frantically trying to buy a home, going to bat, outbidding one another to buy an overpriced home. Then, if they were the highest overpayer and required the least amount of contingencies from the home seller, they were allowed to empty their bank accounts and actually reduce mom and dad's bank accounts too, to pay the cash difference at closing for what they overpaid for the house and what the appraiser actually said the home was worth. This meant for most people that they had to forego their home inspections, meaning that they gave the sellers top dollar for their money pits. I mean, really, this was a time when sellers could live in the house for the last 20 years, not fix anything, and just pass that burden along to the home buyer that was just quite honestly so excited to hear that you got the contract accepted that they didn't realize till way after settlement that they couldn't afford to make the repairs. And it led to one of the largest times of buyer remorse in homeowner history. And guys, because this happened for several years, it actually really trained, not just real estate agents, not just the home buyers, but the home sellers themselves, that this would never end, the sky would never fall, and that real estate would just continue to rise because that's what it does, right? Well, Captain, that's not what 2008 taught us. And as well as, the results of the Fed. I mean, boy, they really pumped the brakes when they raised rates faster than they ever have in history. And that mortgage interest rates, as a result of the Fed raising their rate, has nearly tripled from where it was just a year ago. Now it seems like only the wealthy can afford to buy a home, or quite honestly, rent one either. But as far as home purchases, even the wealthy now, they don't want to overpay, not at all. In fact, they want a better price. And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, they want you to fix everything too. So no more reckless home buying, at least for now, or hopefully at least until I retire. All right, guys, welcome back, and thank you so much for watching. In this video, we're going to talk about the Fed's recent press conference, and I promise we're just going over the highlights because I want to save you from watching this 44 minutes of, in my opinion, absolute chaos. But if you would like to put yourself through it, I've dropped the link in the show notes, so have at it. As we listen, I believe that you'll be able to read between the lines, as Jay Powell does a pretty good job of really confusing me. But I think we're all smart enough to figure out ourselves how this next year just may play out. And after we go through these highlights, I would like for you to do me a favor and comment below and let me know what your thoughts are about, this press conference, where you really think that things are going to go in the next 12 months as far as our economy, our jobs market, and our housing market. Because not only do the viewers and myself really like to read your comments and appreciate them so much, but I believe that there is wisdom in crowds. And let me mention, if this is your first time watching, I'm Todd Sachs. I'm a real estate broker here in Maryland, and our channel is really dedicated to keeping you informed on everything real estate. If you like it here, please consider subscribing to our channel and smash that alert bell. It'll let you know every time we upload content. And as always, don't keep this content to yourself. Please feel free to share it with your friends. The share button is below. Oh boy, I think we're in for a really wild ride on this one. All right, so we all knew the Fed was going to raise rates, but when they started doing it last year, we had no idea that it would be so rapid and actually the fastest rate hike ever in history. Now, many believed or hoped for our own selfish reasons that the Fed would, after last year's report of inflation getting a little bit better, that they would actually pivot and start reducing rates again. But for those of you that kind of embrace this stuff, you actually knew that it wasn't smart and that the Fed probably wouldn't pivot, because that would only cause inflation to continue and prices to just keep soaring out of control. You know, guys, we have to wake up to the fact that we were in this inflated market with sort of like fake money and fake stimulus. And at some point, we have to start thinking about getting prices to a normal increase, at least from the pre-pandemic levels. However, there is a whiplash that comes with raising rates, especially as most American consumers are in more debt than they've ever been before. And now these rate increases have directly affected their ability to even try and pay off their credit card debt, with some credit card interest rates being as high as almost 30% a year. Now, these rate increases are also affecting auto loans. And though mortgages don't run exactly hand in hand with interest rates, it's been said that the recent rate hikes has single-handedly affected the 30-year mortgage rate and taken it to a new high that we haven't seen in decades. What I'm talking about here is mortgage rates nearly tripling from just a short year ago. And exactly for this reason, because home prices were higher than they had ever been before, people that are looking to buy a home right now just simply can't afford the payments. And these buyers have been sidelined once again, which has really caused the brakes to be slammed on home sales altogether. So now, after the Fed's recent meeting, let's listen in on what Jay Powell has to say about interest rates.
Today, the FOMC raised our policy interest rate by 25 basis points. We continue to anticipate that ongoing increases will be appropriate in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2% over time.
So to my fellow real estate professionals, including loan officers, title companies, and anyone else depending on home sales for your income. And this goes for you, hopeful buyers and sellers. And to anyone thinking that the Fed had any intentions of pivoting, well, they don't. You just heard it for yourself. Now, with these higher interest rates and climbing, most consumers, especially those with credit card debt, are really starting to feel the pain.
Consumer spending appears to be expanding at a subdued pace, in part reflecting tighter financial conditions over the past year. Activity in the housing sector continues to weaken, largely reflecting higher mortgage rates. Higher interest rates and slower output growth also appear to be weighing on business fixed investment. Despite the slowdown in growth, the labor market remains extremely tight, with the unemployment rate at a 50-year low, job vacancies still very high, and wage growth elevated. Job gains have been robust, with employment rising by an average of 247,000 jobs per month over the last 3 months.
All right, now the frustrating part here is that Jay Powell says that the job market is strong, and yet we're seeing widespread layoffs now starting to hit mainstream media. And we're going to learn as we dive into this that he actually says that salaries are going down. They're weakening. Salaries are weakening. Now, I guess another frustrating part here is that we're always looking at this backward-looking data. So could it be that we're looking at something that maybe hasn't been reported accurately? Because here's the thing, consumers are starting to spend less. You just heard him say that. Well, what does that mean? That means that they are frequenting stores less often, or at least those that don't cover the necessities like food or fuel or utilities. And Jay Powell also goes on to mention that inflation is still way too high. He does say, though, that despite inflation being too high, that at the end of December, over the last 12 months, the PCE inflation was 5.0%. Now, that's almost triple the 2% inflation rate that Jay Powell would like to see year over year. And even more frustrating to me, Jay Powell always says that this inflation rate excludes volatile food and energy categories. These are the necessities for us. Why aren't we talking about that?
Although inflation has moderated recently, it remains too high. The longer the current bout of high inflation continues, the greater the chance that expectations of higher inflation will become entrenched. The Fed's monetary policy actions are guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation.
So why aren't we talking about that?
We are highly attentive to the risks that inflation poses to both sides of our mandate, and we are strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% objective.
Over how long?
At today's meeting, the committee raised the target range for the federal funds rate by 25 basis points, bringing the target range to 4.5% to 4.75%. And we are continuing the process of significantly reducing the size of our balance sheet. With today's action, we have raised interest rates by 4.5 percentage points over the past year. We continue to anticipate that ongoing increases in the target range for the federal funds rate will be appropriate in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2% over time.
Yeah, and we're going to stop everybody from spending money because, honestly, people are so in debt right now that these higher interest rates are going to make it almost impossible for us to pay off our bills. So how are we going to go into the stores and buy all these discretionary items? And what is that going to result as far as these employers and their need to make money based on the amount of employees that they have and their rising costs? But I have not given you home buyers what you really want to hear most.
We are seeing the effects of our policy actions on demand in the most interest-sensitive sectors of the economy, particularly housing. It will take time, however, for the full effects of monetary restraint to be realized, especially on inflation.
So that really doesn't tell us anything so far about the housing market. It's going to take time, but that's it. Now let's hear what he has to say about actually reducing inflation and protecting jobs.
Reducing inflation is likely to require a period of below-trend growth and some softening of labor market conditions. Restoring price stability is essential to set the stage for achieving maximum employment and stable prices over the longer run.
So, okay, guys, so here's where you just heard Jay Powell introduce you to the softening labor market.
Reducing inflation is likely to require a period of below-trend growth and some softening of labor market conditions.
That's the first time you hear that.
Restoring price stability is essential to set the stage for achieving maximum employment and stable prices over the longer run. The historical record cautions strongly against prematurely loosening policy. We will stay the course until the job is done.
No pivot. No pivot, guys. There you hear it. And that was the first time, like I said, that we heard Jay Powell mention the softening labor market. Now let's continue.
Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. Over the last quarter, we've seen a deceleration in prices, in wages, and a fall in consumer spending, all while the unemployment rate has been able to stay at a historic low. Does this at all change your view of how much the unemployment rate would need to go up, if at all, to see inflation come down to the levels you're looking for?
Good question.
So I would say it is a good thing that the disinflation that we have seen so far has not come at the expense of a weaker labor market. But I would also say that disinflationary process that you now see underway is really at an early stage. What you see is really in the goods sector, you see inflation now coming down because supply chains have been fixed. Demand is shifting back to services, and shortages have been abated. So you see that in the housing services sector. We expect inflation to continue moving up for a while, but then to come down, assuming that new leases continue to be lower.
Let's play that back again.
In the other in the housing services sector, we expect inflation to continue moving up for a while, but then to come down, assuming that new leases continue to be lower. So in those two sectors, you've got a good story.
You have a good story, guys. You got a good story. I like that one, huh? All right, thanks. Thanks, pal.
The issue is that we have a large sector called core non-housing services where we don't see disinflation yet.
She's like, what? What? What did you just, did you even answer my question? So let me kind of try and digest this for a second, huh? Did you understand anything that he just said? Disinflation is not coming at the expense of a weaker labor market. But he just said that wages were weakening. So I'm kind of confused. Are wages weakening a good thing for the labor market? Or is that, maybe it's not a negative effect. I don't know. Maybe because prices are going to come down so far, we can adjust salaries to come down too, so that that will eventually balance it out. But yet in the housing services sector, we expect for inflation to continue moving up.
And
then, guys, he told this poor reporter, without really answering her question, he said that here you have two really good stories. What the heck is a good story? She even seems confused as to what's a good story. But in core non-housing services, we're not seeing disinflation yet. Well, Mr. Powell, you just said that in housing, we're not seeing disinflation yet. So are we seeing any disinflation? So now let's hear how people will be affording to actually pay for this rising housing inflation.
Hi, Chair Powell. Neil Irwin with Axios. You and some of your colleagues have emphasized the possibility that job openings could come down and that that would let some of the air out of the labor market without major job losses. We saw the opposite in the December jolts this morning, job openings actually rising. That also has coincided with slowdown in wage inflation. Do you believe that openings are an important indicator to be studying to understand where the labor market is and where wage inflation might be heading?
So you're right about the data, of course. What we've seen average hourly earnings and now the employment cost index abating a little bit, still off of their highs of 6 months ago and more, but still at levels that are fairly elevated. The job openings number in jolts has been quite volatile recently. And I did see that it moved back up this morning. I do think that it's probably an important indicator. The ratio, I guess, is back up to 1.9 job openings to unemployed people who are looking for work.
All right, guys. So what does that mean? 1.9 job openings per unemployed. What are these jobs? How much do they pay? And do these people even have the skills for these jobs?
It's an indicator, but nonetheless, you're right. We do see wages moving down. If you look across the rest of the labor market, you still see very high payroll job creation.
We do see wages going down. Well, geez, guys, I don't know about you, but I'm hoping that wages don't go down any more than what they are right now, because it seems that people can't afford prices of just about anything right now. And, here's the thing that we're not talking about. So disinflation, would that be the same as deflation? Because the only way that we will be able to improve things if salaries are declining or weakening or going down, or if the labor market declines in any way, the only way that we'll then be able to see a reprieve versus wages going at a faster pace than current inflation, well, then we would hope that wages would be at least increasing over the current deflation. I'm not seeing any deflation, guys. I've been to the grocery store several times in the last month. I am shocked at the prices. I am a contractor and, I still do things, here and there, especially on my own properties. I have never seen the prices at Home Depot, at Lowe's, or wherever, supply company. I have not seen prices so high. And yeah, okay, so lumber is not $46 for a 2x4 anymore. But guys, we are still so far over double and triple in a lot of cases where prices were just a few short years ago. And by the way, wage growth has not kept up with these prices. And finally, guys, one last clip.
So I just wanted to connect a couple dots here. The statement made a number of changes that seem to be saying things are getting better. You're saying inflation has eased. That's new. You've taken out references to the war in Ukraine as causing price increases. You've taken out references to the pandemic. You've eliminated all the reasons that you said prices were being driven higher. Yet that's not mapping to any change in how you describe policy. We still have ongoing increases to come. So I'm wondering, why is that the case? And does it have more to do with uncertainty around the outlook, or more to do with you not wanting to give a very overeager market a reason to get ahead of itself and overreact?
So I guess I would say it this way. We can now say, I think, for the first time, that the disinflationary process has started. We can see that, and we see it really in goods prices so far.
Disinflationary. It's an interesting word.
Goods prices is a big sector. This is what we thought would happen since the very beginning, and now here it is actually happening. And for the reasons we thought, it's supply chains, it's shortages, and it's demand revolving
free money
back towards
stimulus.
services. So this is a good thing. But that's around a quarter of the PCE price index. Core PCE price index. So the second sector is housing services, and that's driven by very different things. And we, as I mentioned, with housing services, we expect, and other forecasters expect, that measured inflation will continue moving up for several months, but will then come down, assuming that new leases continue to be soft.
Assuming that new leases will continue to be soft, guys. Well, here's the big thing now. Are we seeing that? And if all the other costs are going up, things like insurance is going up, taxes are going up for these landlords, utility costs are higher than ever. Is it practical that we will see rents come down?
And we do assume that. So we think that that's sort of in the pipeline. And we actually see disinflation in the goods sector, and we see it in the pipeline for two sectors that amount to a little less than half. So this is good. And we note that when we say inflation is coming down, that this is good. We expect to see that disinflation process will be seen, we hope soon, in the core goods the core services ex housing sector that I talked about. We don't see it yet. It's 7 or 8 different kinds of services, not all of them.
I guess, guys, we're going to have to wait till March until they meet again before we actually see how this thing unfolds. But I think it's clear to say that for those of you, especially my friends that are loan officers that have said, hey, in the first quarter, we're going to see mortgage interest rates drop back down to 4%. Guys, I think that if you read the writing on the wall here, read between the lines, I think that you're going to agree with me that I don't think that's going to happen. All right, guys, and here's where I thank you again for watching this video. If you liked it, hit the thumbs up and let me know that you did. And I'd love to know your comments. Drop them below if you haven't already done so. Am I the only one that's confused by at least what you've heard so far? Or is this clear to you where we're going? I think we can read between the lines and say that we throw the playbook out the window. No one really has any idea how this is going to work out. But until next time, guys, if you haven't done so, subscribe, hit the alert bell. See you next time.
Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal housing opportunity.